When we hear the word evil, we think of cold-blooded killers, shadowy figures in the night, grown men with tortured pasts and twisted motives. But what if I told you that evil doesn't always come with a deep voice and a long rap sheet? Sometimes it comes in the form of a 12-year-old girl, wearing pigtails, carrying a diary and harboring thoughts so dark they can make even seasoned detectives lose sleep. These aren't your average true crime stories. These are tales that make the phrase, "looks can be deceiving," feel like a warning label. Because behind the sweet smiles and school uniforms, there lurks something chilling, calculated, and truly monstrous. The most evil girl children in history that you've never heard of. In today's video, we're diving into 3 of the most disturbing cases of young girls who committed acts so brutal, they shocked not just their communities, but the world. And no, we're not talking about the infamous Mary Bell or well-known school shootings. These are the cases that slipped under the radar, the ones rarely talked about, yet deeply unforgettable. Now, you might be thinking, kids don't just turn into killers overnight. And you're right. But what happens when childhood innocence is replaced by a hunger for control or a desire to kill just to see what it feels like? What happens when the monster isn't under bed, but sleeping in the room next to you? These stories aren't easy to tell. And I'll be honest, they're not easy to hear either, because they challenge what we believe about childhood, about guilt, and about the capacity for cruelty at a young age. But they're important. We start with a girl who smiled at her classmates by day and planned a murder by night. A girl who wrote in her diary, "It was amazing, enjoyable, even." She wasn't on the FBI's radar. She didn't have a violent background, but she had a desire, one that would lead her to kill, just to feel something. Then, we meet another child, this one even younger, just 12 years old. Her victim? An innocent teenage girl. Completely random. The killer? A girl with no motive, only rage. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. In fact, she bragged about it in her journal and called it a beautiful murder. And finally, perhaps the most terrifying of them all, a girl who didn't kill just once or even twice. No. She helped slaughter her entire family, her mom, her dad, and even her little brother, all in the name of love and twisted fantasy. She was just 12. 3 girls, 3 true stories, and a haunting reminder that evil doesn't wait for adulthood. This isn't just about shock value. These cases raise uncomfortable questions. Can a child be born evil? Or is evil something they learn? Something they absorb from a broken home, a violent society, or a neglected mind? In each case, the girls involved seem perfectly ordinary on the outside, smiling in school photos, dueling in notebooks, even singing in church choirs. But beneath the surface, something was brewing, something most adults missed until it was far too late. And here's the scariest part. These girls weren't from war zones or dystopian nightmares. They were from small towns, from peaceful neighborhoods, from places like yours. So I ask you to listen carefully, to not just hear the facts, but feel the weight of what they mean. Because this video isn't about monsters. It's about human beings, very young ones, capable of murder, capable of cruelty, capable of committing unspeakable acts with zero remorse. And the deeper we dig, the more one terrifying truth becomes clear. Sometimes, innocence is only a mask. So stay with me, watch until the end, because by the time we reach number 1, you'll see a case so shocking, so bizarre, it makes horror movies feel tame. This isn't fiction. These are real lives, real victims, and real evil. Now, are you ready to meet the girls who were innocents like a mask and hid evil underneath? Let's begin. Case 3, Alyssa Bustamante, the teen, who killed for fun. October 21st, 2009, St. Martin's, Missouri. A sleepy little town where the biggest stories usually come from football games or county fairs. But that fall, something happened that would change everything. It started like any other ordinary day. 9-year-old Elizabeth Olton was walking home from a friend's house, a path she'd taken a dozen times before. Her pink sweater, her Hello Kitty backpack. She was a bright, sweet kid, the kind you'd never expect would end up on the evening news. But Elizabeth never made it home. Her family reported her missing within minutes. Search parties were formed. Flashlights cut through the trees as neighbors combed the woods behind their homes. Everyone was hoping she'd just gotten lost, maybe wandered off the trail, but in the back of their minds, they feared something worse. The truth was far worse than anyone imagined. Just a few houses down from Elizabeth's home lived 15-year-old Alyssa Bustamante, a quiet girl, average grades, dyed black hair. She seemed like your typical moody teenager. But beneath that exterior was something deeply broken. Alyssa had a long history of emotional issues, self-harm, suicide attempts, and time spent in psychiatric facilities. Her journals were filled with scribbled thoughts about depression, rage, and an obsession with death. But no one realized how far that obsession had gone. On the day Elizabeth disappeared, Alyssa had skipped school. She'd dug a shallow grave in the woods behind her house. 2, actually, not just 1, 2 graves. And then she waited. Later that afternoon, she saw Elizabeth walking by. Alyssa approached her and, in her own words, led her into the woods. There, without any warning, Alyssa attacked the little girl. She strangled her, stabbed her, slit her throat. Then she buried her in one of the graves she dug earlier. No motive, no revenge, no heated argument, just cold, calculated murder. For days, Elizabeth's family held out hope, but the community was growing uneasy. And then, a break. Police received a tip pointing to Alyssa. She was brought in for questioning. At first, she lied, said she didn't know anything. But eventually, the truth came out. She led officers to the woods and to Elizabeth's shallow grave. It was what came next that truly chilled investigators to the bone. Police searched Alyssa's bedroom and found her journal. And inside, between song lyrics and doodles, was a chilling entry, dated the day of the murder. At first, it started off normal. She wrote about skipping class, hanging out with her sister, and then this. I just killed someone. I strangled them, slit their throat, and stabbed them. It was amazing. As soon as you get over the oh my God feeling, it's pretty enjoyable. I'm kind of nervous and shaky though right now. Okay, I gotta go to church now, lol. Asterisk. Yes, church. Right after committing murder, she went to church with her family. Her handwriting wasn't shaky. It wasn't panicked. It was neat, almost cheerful. There was no remorse, no sorrow, only satisfaction. Later, Alyssa would tell authorities she did it because she wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone. She wasn't angry. She wasn't jealous. She was curious. The judge in her trial would say her actions were not only premeditated, but exceptionally cruel. He described her as a danger to society, and it was hard to argue. Alyssa Bustamante was charged as an adult. She took a plea deal, second-degree murder, and armed criminal action. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. She was 18 when she was officially sentenced. Just barely an adult, but already a killer. To this day, Alyssa remains locked up in a Missouri prison. Every few years, articles surface about her, talking about appeals, parole reviews, or how she's changed. But for many, there's no forgetting what she did. Especially not for Elizabeth's family. A mother lost her daughter. A community lost its sense of safety. All because one teenage girl wanted to satisfy her curiosity about death. The scariest part? Alyssa looked like any other kid. Went to school, laughed with friends, posted on social media. And yet, behind that ordinary exterior was someone capable of something extraordinarily evil. No one suspected a thing until it was too late. And that's why this story sits at number 3 on our list. Because it reminds us that evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a teenage girl in a hoodie, smiling quietly while writing about murder in her journal. Case 2. Sharon Carr the Devil in School Uniform. Our next case takes us across the ocean to the quiet town of Camberley, Surrey in England, a place where crime was rare, where people still left their doors unlocked, and where the worst thing most kids ever did was sneak out past curfew. But in 1992, that small-town calm was shattered. Not by a gang, not by a hardened criminal, but by a 12-year-old girl. Her name? Sharon Carr. At first glance, Shara was like any other kid. Lived in a foster home, went to school, smiled in pictures. She wasn't known for academic brilliance, but she blended in, played with other kids, got into minor trouble, but nothing out of the ordinary. Until one night, something snapped. June 7th, 1992. A 32-year-old woman named Katie Ratcliffe was walking home after visiting friends. She never made it. Her body was found just hours later, viciously stabbed 32 times. Her throat had been slashed, her clothes torn. The sheer brutality of the attack stunned police. It looked personal, rage-filled. They were convinced the killer had to be a man, someone with strength, someone with motive, but they were wrong. For years, the case went cold. No leads, no suspects, nothing made sense. And then, 2 years later, a 14-year-old girl, Sharon Carr, was arrested, but not for murder. Not yet. She'd attacked a classmate with a knife, completely unprovoked. She tried to stab the girl to death during school hours. Teachers had to pull her off. She was detained, and as police started digging, what they found was beyond disturbing. In her journals and school notebooks were graphic, handwritten confessions. Sharon wrote about how much she loved the feeling of stabbing someone, how she enjoyed watching the blood, how she still dreamed about it. I enjoyed putting the blade up her. It made me feel powerful. I was born to be a murderer. Killing is my business, and business is good. At first, investigators weren't sure what to make of it. Was she just fantasizing, trying to shock people? But then she named her victim, described Katie Ratcliffe, described the murder scene with details never released to the public. She knew everything. Police connected the dots. DNA was retested. Witnesses were re-questioned. And suddenly, it all came together. Sharon Carr, the 12-year-old girl no one ever suspected, had killed a grown woman for no reason at all. No motive, no history, just a child who wanted to kill. In court, Sharon showed no emotion, no remorse. She smiled at odd moments, laughed to herself. At one point, she even leaned into her lawyer and whispered, "This is fun." She was tried and convicted in 1997 at just 17 years old, making her the youngest female murderer in Britain's history. Psychiatrists called her dangerous, a true psychopath. One expert described her as having a sexual and sadistic motivation to kill. She wasn't just violent, she craved violence. Even in prison, Sharon's behavior was terrifying. She assaulted guards, threatened inmates. At one point, she bragged that she wanted to eat the liver of another prisoner, Hannibal Lecter style. And here's the part that stays with people. Sharon didn't kill for revenge or fear or money. She didn't even know Katie Ratcliffe. She picked her at random, followed her, attacked her, enjoyed it, then walked away like it was nothing. 12 years old, and already a predator. To this day, Sharon Carr remains in a secure psychiatric facility. Multiple parole boards have reviewed her case, and each time they reach the same conclusion. She is still too dangerous to be released. Even decades later, she continues to show signs of extreme aggression. She remains obsessed with knives, with blood, with killing. She's changed her name over the years, filed appeals, tried to argue she's been rehabilitated. But behind every new name, behind every application, is the same girl, the same mind, the same sadistic desires. And that's why Sharon Carr earns her place as number 2 on our list. Because her story isn't just disturbing, it's terrifying. A young girl, a stranger to her victim, who killed not out of impulse, but for pleasure. What do you do with a child like that? Can someone born to kill ever be unmade? Maybe some questions don't have answers. Case 1. Mary Bell, the little girl who smiled after murder. When we think of children, we imagine innocence, laughter, wide-eyed wonder. But in 1968, the people of Newcastle, England, saw something else entirely. Something terrifying. Her name was Mary Bell. She was just 11 years old when the murders began. And not petty crimes, not arson or theft. Mary killed, coldly, deliberately, and then walked away smiling. Mary was born into chaos. Her mother, Betty, was a sex worker, reportedly violent, neglectful, and possibly involved in drug use. Rumors swirled for years that she tried to kill Mary multiple times when she was just a toddler, once by accidentally overdosing her on pills, another time by tossing her out a window. By the time Mary reached school age, she had already seen more pain than most adults. But the darkness inside her wasn't just born, it evolved. At school, Mary was aggressive, manipulative. She strangled classmates. She stole. She lied. Teachers were alarmed, but no one thought she was dangerous. Not really. After all, she was only a child. Until May 25, 1968. The victim? 4-year-old Martin Brown. He was found dead in an abandoned house, his body lying near an empty pill bottle. There were no signs of struggle, no obvious injuries. Police believe it was a tragic accident. They were wrong. A few days later, the local nursery school was broken into, vandalized, and left behind with something deeply unsettling. Notes, scribbled on torn paper. One of them read, "We did murder Martin Brown. We did murder Martin Brown. Signed F&M. The police dismissed them as childish pranks. They had no idea they were staring into the minds of killers. Then came the second murder. July 31st, 1968. Just 2 months later, 3-year-old Brian Howe went missing. His body was discovered in a field near his home, strangled with visible bruising and puncture wounds. His hair had been cut, his genitals mutilated, and carved into his stomach with a razor blade or scissors was the letter M. It was now clear this wasn't an accident. This was murder, and it was ritualistic. But even more disturbing was who was responsible. The killer was Mary Bell, and her accomplice? Her friend, Norma Bell. No relation, just another young girl, a year older, but far less calculating. After Brian's murder, Mary returned to the scene over and over, watching police, taunting them. She even visited the boy's grieving mother and asked, "Do you miss Brian? Do you cry for him?" When detectives began questioning children in the neighborhood, Mary's behavior raised eyebrows. She was evasive, cold, and she seemed to know details that hadn't been made public. Eventually, the pressure cracked Norma. She confessed, pointed the finger squarely at Mary. Mary was arrested, and even in custody, she played games, smirking, changing her story. At one point, she said she liked hurting things. Animals, people, whatever she could get her hands on. During the trial, psychologists described Mary as intelligent, manipulative, and lacking remorse. They diagnosed her with severe personality disorder. The courtroom was stunned. A small girl with dark curls and doll-like eyes sitting in defendant's chair, accused of murder. And not just murder, but of enjoying it. She was ultimately found guilty of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. The judge ruled she had diminished mental capacity, but was still dangerously aware of her actions. Mary Bell was sentenced to detention at Her Majesty's pleasure, a vague, indefinite sentence that meant she could be held as long as the government deemed necessary. She spent 12 years behind bars, and then she was released. In 1980, at the age of 23, Mary was given a new identity, a new location, and a chance at new life. She later had a daughter, who had no idea of her mother's past until reporters tracked them down in the 90s. The public outrage was explosive, but the British court stood firm. Mary Bell was legally entitled to privacy, even after 2 murders. Today, Mary is in her 60s, still living under a protected identity, still shielded by the state, and still a free woman. Many ask, can someone like Mary ever truly be rehabilitated? Or did the evil run too deep too early? We may never know the full truth, because Mary Bell, the girl who strangled toddlers before she hit puberty, never fully explained why she did it. She just smiled. That's what makes her the number 1 on our list, not just because of what she did, but because of how she did it. Calculated, proud, and completely untouched by guilt. She wasn't born a monster. she was made into one. But once made, she never looked back. 3 girls, 3 children, 3 monsters hiding in plain sight. Each case forces us to ask terrifying questions. Can evil be born? Can it grow in silence? And worst of all, can it wear the face of a child? Mary Bell, Sharon Carr, Alyssa Bustamante. Names you won't find in every headline, but stories that stay with you long after the screen fades to black. And this is just the surface. There are more chilling cases, more dark truths buried beneath the surface of innocence. If this video kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. It helps us bring more forgotten stories like these to light. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of our true crime deep dives. From the infamous to the obscure, we reveal it all one case at a time. Comment below and tell us, which case shocked you most? Or do you know a lesser-known case we should cover next? Because sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones still learning their ABCs.